So welcome to our last panel for today. But before we start, I do want to say, just because this is such a huge audience for this multi-day symposium looking at the 50th anniversary of the end of the war and the 30th anniversary of U.S.-Vietnam reconciliation, this is not the final day. We still have another day of programming, saying to my students in particular, so come back here tomorrow. Our students. Our students. So very, very happy to be starting this panel. To really the professor here, who is the invisible professor to Tommy, Vallely, and myself, and sometime guest speaker, visitor Tony Boy, who is somewhere in the audience, that this class that I did specifically to show this film and have this event, History 2444, the history of the Vietnam War, 50th special and what is it? No, it's my History of the Vietnam War, the 50th anniversary special edition. So it's finally happening. This has been so moving for me because I have taught the documentary for the past 4 years, and I teach a class on the Vietnam War every semester. So I think I know this film better than anyone, maybe even better than the talking heads, the producers, the directors. It has really saved my life as a teacher. I write about the Vietnam War, I teach about it, but nothing really matches this in so many ways because it brings the Vietnam War alive to students, to my students, and what they grapple with in class in response to what they see has been amazing. I mean, I could cram them with every book, every sort of oral history, anything. It does not really bring alive the Vietnam War to them in the way that this film does, this 10-episode, 18-hour documentary, which is, I still say, not long enough. We need more. But I'm very happy to introduce my partner in crime today.
Yes.
Is that what you get?
Yes, indeed.
Ken Burns. Everyone, please join me in a round of applause. And since I was thrown in at the last minute to be moderator, I was happy to be sitting up there with my students to watch this. I actually don't know what Ken and Lynn have put together and Sarah have put together, so I will turn it over to you again.
Professor Nguyen, thank you so much. We're deeply honored and moved to be here on this occasion. Lynn Novick and Sarah Botstein and I spent 10 years, 10 and a half years working on our film about the Vietnam War. It's an experience that we will never have again in our lives, and we're so grateful to all of the people who helped us make it. And I'm happy to say that our panel will include a lot of people. The way it's going to work is we're going to show the introduction, less than 10 minutes of the entire series, not show you the whole 18 hours, and then show a 17-minute sort of introduction to various people that you'll meet a little bit later. We'll have a panel discussion, and before we leave, we'll leave you with one last clip. But I just wanted to say how grateful we are, how moving it is for me to be able to attend your class each year and to see your students and to speak to them and shed tears with them and ideas with them. And so we're very, very happy to be here. So I just wanted to acknowledge a few people who are going to be on the panel who are here. Obviously, my co-director, Lynn Novick. It was Lynn, actually. It was Lynn and Sarah who really pushed to have Vietnamese voices included in the film, and not just in a minor way, but in a central way. And being an American filmmaker, I was initially pretty anxious, and what was clear is that they were right and I was wrong. And I think the strength of the film comes from the fact that you do experience a wide range of American voices about it, from deserters and protesters to essentially, medal-winning soldiers and everything in between, Gold Star mothers and the like. We're also happy to have with us here our co-producer, Dang Hoa from Vietnam, who we are particularly grateful that one of the great contributors to our film, General Khac Tam, is here. I don't need to say anything other than at that time he was a general in the North Vietnamese Army, the Vietnamese Army. We also have Mai Elliot, who is, where is Mai? Who has got an amazing story to tell, as does Nancy Biberman. Nancy, where are you? There she is at the end. And then we have two Marine corporals, both of whom I made you a general, Tommy. You're still a corporal. Roger Harris. And Thomas Vallely. Both of them, as Marines, were in I Corps, which was the last place an American Marine wanted to be in the Vietnam in the first years of our military engagement. And I hope the clips that we've selected will reflect a little bit about that. So we're going to look at the intro, then 17 minutes that will introduce you to the people here, a conversation, and then one final clip. But we're always grateful to Professor Nguyen for making all of this happen, particularly on this extraordinary, momentous, and for us, incredibly moving anniversary. Thank you.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our co-sponsor, Columbia Global, today, and in particular, EVP Wafa El-Sader. You could just stand, and thank you so much for sponsoring. And just a shout out to my co-organizers sitting over there, John and Zui. So it's happening. All right, so without further ado. Okay, calling the panelists up, please.
You Marines, sit with General Tom.
That was for Sarah, who was.
She's pretending that she doesn't want to be involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't even know where to start. I'm for the first time, and my students can confirm this. Feel a little awestruck, starstruck, and just in silence. Okay. I know that the way I would like to do this. Okay, here's where to start. I know my students have a ton of questions for you. So what we're going to do in this part is to keep it a little brief so as to allow the students to ask their questions. And one of the things I'll just throw out maybe to the directors, and then the directors perhaps can help me ask questions to the interviewees. But now it's almost 10 years after you have made the film. It has aired worldwide. What do you take after this decade in terms of reflecting back upon this film, particularly at the end of the 50th anniversary of the end of the war?
So, you know, Lynn and I, we've moved on to many other projects together and apart, and the team that was on this has moved on to other things, and so it's unusual for us to spend time with it. And I think today was like a kind of shock of a catch up, and so I just like to acknowledge Nancy Biberman, and you know, my overwhelming emotion is to just say I'm sorry, because of I'm just sorry. And I'm so grateful, Nancy, for your courage. I know you took a lot of shit for that, which was unnecessary because it was authentic and human response. And I think there was a part of what General Khac Tam said in the film that wasn't in the clip that you saw, that I was wondering if the general might remember, which is as he's struggling after the war to understand its cost, as we are doing today, he recalled the difficulty of speaking to parents and loved ones of the lost, and remembered a song that he recites the lyrics of with great emotion. And I'm wondering if the general would mind sharing that with us this afternoon.
Use the mic. Hello?
Không có cần
You
chị
don't
chị
need to
chị,
touch
chị
the
nói
mic.
thôi.
Just hold the mic then.
Just hold it.
And just
okay,
so
like
that
chị nói thôi.
yeah, it's okay. Yes, okay. Go ahead. So
should I translate it to the
Yes, yeah, if you can ask.
Cái bài đó.
tức là cái câu hỏi của ông là của cô là hỏi anh là sau cái cuộc chiến ấy thì anh nhìn nhận là cái quá trình cả một cái quãng đời mà anh chiến đấu đánh nhau ấy, thì là nó như thế nào, rồi anh sẽ giải thích về những cái khó khăn, những cái gì là đã phải vượt qua, rồi sau đấy thì là anh cũng có trong phim thì anh cũng có nói về cái bài hát mà anh thấy là tâm đắc nhất về 3 lần tiễn con đi đấy, thì là những cái đau khổ của cuộc chiến đấy, thì bây giờ thì anh có thể là nói lại cho mọi người được biết không? Dạ,
Go ahead.
Hold it close, yeah.
Cứ ngồi.
Tôi cảm ơn câu hỏi của ông Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron, for the good question.
Tôi thì là một nhân chứng của cuộc chiến tranh
I'm the war witness
trong kháng chiến chống Mỹ.
in the war against the US.
Tôi đi bộ đội thì mới có 19 tuổi thôi.
I was admitted
Và
to
năm nay
the
đã
military
là
when I'm
83 tuổi rồi.
19 years old.
84 tuổi rồi.
Today I'm 84 years old.
Nhưng mà tôi không bao giờ quên được những ký ức của người lính trong thời chiến.
I never forget the experience that one soldiers went through.
Sau khi tôi nghiên cứu thì tôi đã là giảng viên, rồi là trở thành tiến sĩ của một cái trường học viện quân sự của Việt Nam.
I gained a doctor degree in military training academy.
Tôi là trở thành một tiến sĩ khoa học. Tôi nghiên cứu sâu về cái cách đổ bộ của cái sư đoàn không vận số 1.
And I conducted a lot of research and I assume a lot of knowledge and experience about the landing of the airborne division American.
Nhiều trận đánh từ chiến thuật cho đến chiến dịch thì có trận thắng, có trận chưa thắng.
I went through many battles, whether it's tactical or strategical level.
Và gây lên những chết chóc giữa hai bên.
And the operations course inflict deaths and injured to both sides quite a lot.
Thế và rất cảm ơn cái nhóm làm phim Chiến tranh Việt Nam đã ghi lại những hình ảnh chân thực và đồng thời nó còn gợi lại những cái đau khổ của cả nhân dân hai nước và nhất là những người lính đã tham chiến.
I have to express my gratitude to the filmmaking group that reflect genuinely, truly what happened in the war, and also it's help people to think back of what really happens through the war.
Vì không có các vị ghi lại và chúng tôi biết rằng làm cái bộ phim này là rất là gian khổ. Thì sau này cái thế hệ sau người ta không biết là chiến tranh là thế nào.
I know that this is the hard work of yours, and you invested quite a lot of time and energy and efforts. Otherwise, the future generation will not understand how the wars was.
Rất tiếc là bên Việt Nam chưa phổ biến.
Regretfully, Vietnamese side does not accept it to be spread to the public
như là bên Mỹ
like in the US
hoặc một số nước khác.
and in other countries as well.
Thì cái mục đích chính là chúng ta thấy chiến tranh nó là như thế và cần phải tránh nó đi.
The
loại
purpose
trừ nó đi.
of the series is to tell the people that the war is brutal, and we try not to have another brutal war like this.
Cho nên tôi cũng được tặng 10 cái cuốn phim như thế của chiến tranh Việt Nam.
Yeah, I also given kind of awarded 10 part of the series.
Thỉnh thoảng tôi cũng tổ chức chiếu trên những cái cuốn phim đó để cho gia đình bạn bè người ta xem.
I showed the 10 part series to our family members and to our friends as well.
Cũng góp một phần nào để thấy rằng là đấy, chiến tranh nó là như thế đấy.
And also teach the younger generation and the one who's not really involved in the war about the reality of the war.
Tôi cũng được xem nhiều lần, nhưng mỗi một lần là gợi lại những cái đau khổ
I often watch it over.
cho nhân dân
And I feel kind of pain
của hai
every
nước,
time that I watch it.
đặc biệt là những người lính đã chết trên chiến trường.
The pain inflicted to the peoples, both the peoples, and especially to
Tôi có một suy nghĩ là
the soldiers who suffered a lot during the war time.
Tôi có một suy nghĩ là chúng tôi chết vì tổ quốc chúng tôi, vì nhân dân chúng tôi.
We have the thought, we convinced that if we die for our nations, we die for our people.
Nhưng mà chúng tôi thắc mắc là không biết là người Mỹ và một số các nước chư hầu như là Philippines, Thái Lan, Hàn Quốc, rồi là Australia, tức là đi đánh thuê cho Mỹ, thì không biết họ chết về cái gì.
But we have no idea why the allies like New Zealand, like Australia, like the Filipinos, like Thailand, when they fought in the war together with the US, if they got killed, they die for what? That's what I don't know. We don't know.
Kết quả của chiến tranh thì gần 60.000 người của Mỹ đã chết. Còn riêng Việt Nam thì chúng tôi cũng tương đương như thế. Và đến nay có tới 8 vạn người chưa xác định danh tính.
When the war is over, almost 60,000 of American soldiers killed. People killed.
Nhiều ông bố bà mẹ chờ ngóng con tới 50-60 năm mà chưa tìm thấy danh tính của con mình.
And many Vietnamese, North Vietnamese or communist soldiers who also got killed. And many still, the buried places are not identified yet. And mothers, fathers, and wives are still trying to dig up any kind of information of their buried place.
Chúng tôi cũng đề nghị với chính phủ Việt Nam phối hợp với chính phủ Mỹ kết hợp như thế nào đó để xác định được cái danh tính cho từng người lính mà hiện nay chưa có tên.
We requested the government of Vietnam and the leadership of Vietnam in coordination with the US side try to help us to identify the corpses and the buried place of the grave of the sacrifice.
Sắp tới vào khoảng tháng 10 thì chúng tôi có dự cái hội nghị ở bên học viện Harvard.
Yeah. In the coming October, we are veterans will attend another meeting and discussion at the Harvard University about the subject.
Trong có nội dung tức là sẽ trao lại, bên Mỹ sẽ trao lại những cái tọa độ mà những người Mỹ trong các cái trận chiến đó sẽ tìm kiếm.
And the American people and organization will deliver whatever the information about the grave that they have in hand to the Vietnamese side.
We thank the general. Thank you.
Cảm ơn.
Thế và tôi là một trong những người tướng đi tìm liệt sĩ được hơn 200 người. Vì họ cùng đi với tôi thì tôi lại may mắn còn sống.
I myself will also take part in the trips to figure out the burial place of our comrades and co-soldiers.
Thì trách nhiệm của mình là phải đi tìm đồng đội.
And my responsibility is to figure the place of our
để trả lại cho gia đình người ta những cái liệt sĩ đấy.
To provide whatever information available to the families.
Mỗi một lần đi là chúng tôi tự góp tiền. Tôi là thương binh.
I'm also a wounded soldier, and every trip we have to use the fund contributed from our own pocket.
Tôi là thương binh thì tôi hàng tháng là tôi được khoảng 6 triệu đồng tiền Việt Nam. Tôi nuôi lợn đất. Thế xong hàng tháng bỏ ra để đóng góp với cái.
Clearly, I think this is a reason why we should have more episodes. I think it's time for the team to come back.
Chắc là còn cần có nhiều cái thời lượng cho cái phim của những người lính như ông hơn.
Xin cảm ơn.
I mean, it's incredible to have, I mean, just as the General Khac Tam just said, the stories pour forth. And, you know, just seeing you all up here, I know that, you know, just looking here, there's so many who've passed since it aired in 2016. I saw Joe Galloway, I saw Hal Sorley, and others. And so, you know, to have you all here tonight is just amazing, particularly for my students. Who, and again, as I've said, I've assigned this over the past 4 years, and I see students from previous years. So watching it weekly, we just cannot tell you how effective of a teaching tool. And teaching tool is not doing it justice. It really evokes the Vietnam War and brings it alive to the students in ways that I can.
Can I ask you a question?
Wow.
Professor?
Okay. Sure.
So, unlike any other film we've made, which has usually been, essentially the film has been the end result of scholarship of other people, and this film is no exception, we were stunned as we were making the film to feel among our 23 or so advisors who had a particular expertise in one area of Vietnam War or another. It might be the presidential tapes, it might be declassified Vietnamese military records, whatever it might be. All of them were sharing with their colleagues what was clearly new to their colleagues. And so we suddenly realized that a film, which is very unusual, essentially contained all of the most recent scholarship across many different areas of the Vietnam War when it came out in 2017. We felt and continue to feel that the film also, to our surprise, still represents sort of the apotheosis of the collection of scholarship. We're waiting for a single volume or another scholarly story or another film to replace it, but we're surprised that it hasn't yet. Is that true? Is it your feeling that this is still the place that sort of collects the most up-to-date and the most variety of scholarship on both sides of the struggle, but also within the academy and various avenues of exploration and modes of inquiry?
It makes me immediately want to call Professor Ed Miller to stand up.
Oh, geez.
Ed served on
Ed,
this
stand
board.
up, please.
Stand up, Ed.
I didn't see you. This is so great. So Ed lived up just above us in Dartmouth, in Hanover, New Hampshire. The film was made in Walpole, New Hampshire, and Ed was unbelievable advisor day to day, but also was able to give us lots of new and declassified Vietnamese military things and other sorts of stuff. And every time he spoke at our editing sessions, all the other scholars would look around like they were hearing something new for the first time.
I mean, the question is a good one, and I think it was in one of the maybe the clip that I saw to introduce the making of the film, and that there isn't one definitive volume, and I think this is the beauty, this is the power of the film, and it connects to tomorrow's event, which is that there's so many conversations left unsettled that you will not come to one. I mean, my students know this. There is no such thing as capital T truth in history. And the film captures that. There are many different perspectives. Here it's clear we tried to gather North Vietnamese, South Vietnamese, American, civilian, anti-war. I mean, it's so it's all captured there. And I know Lynn did such an amazing job collecting those stories.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us. And such a great question, Ken. I was just thinking about, I think one of the things that seemed clear, and even just from this wonderful conversation we just heard from the general, that we were able, thanks to Hoa, Tommy, and the support we had in Vietnam, to talk to people in ways about the war that they didn't usually speak. That was the impression we had. People were saying things, describing their experiences in ways that just were not part of the public conversation about the war on all sides in Vietnam. So even Bao Ninh saying, there's no winners. I mean, can't say that, can you? But he did. And I just wonder, I mean, that felt pretty fresh to us. And I hope that since the film has been shown in Vietnam as well, that the conversation maybe has changed, that there's more room for a deeper conversation about the scale of loss, about the meaning of the war, about what lessons do we take from all of this. And so we're so grateful for everyone who participated. And particularly it felt in Vietnam that people were, willing to sort of take a breath and say things that they maybe said privately but didn't say publicly.
Just another plug, because now there are new histories that come out. I see there's Keith Taylor, Olga Dror. John Phan's work is too pre-modern. It doesn't apply. There's Martina. I mean, the scholarship just keeps coming out, and this is the one thing that the students understand, that as I'm giving them, sort of the classics as well as the new interpretations. This is what makes the film so powerful, because they've seen them all come together. We're never going to agree, or we'll agree to disagree about certain points of the war. I want to bring it back to music, or no, Ken?
No, I just was feeling that usually film, particularly documentary film, is used as a tool of advocacy. And we've adopted a narrative strategy that says we want to create a vessel in which there could be lots of different points of view and opposing points of view that could coexist. And so that you could honor the fact that there's no capital T truth, and at the same time communicate the variety of truths that are there without necessarily copying to one or the other. I mean, we can say about war, as Bao Ninh did, as Lynn repeated, just the incredible, there's only destruction. There's only destruction. And so we have that, but I think that's important. Music, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. I was going to take it to light, mainly because this is, the question first started with music, and one of the things I had in assigning this course, they made a playlist, one of the classes, and I think it's because, again, you bring the war alive. They were so moved by the music. This year in the lecture class, I started every lecture with kind of riffing off what you did, a song that was playing in that year, whatever I'm lecturing on, the song that I'm playing, and it could be a Vietnamese song, an American song, had to have been made that year. So the question I have, and maybe I'll now go down the list. Did you all get to weigh in on the music? And if not, what song would you have wanted to have included? We'll start down there with Mai Elliot and bring, yes, we're going to start light. This is my softball question, and then we'll get to the harder ones.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I think the song that really resonated with me is the Beatles song, Let It Be, because I remember that during the war, at the end, it became like an anthem among American troops in Vietnam. So every time I hear it, it always brings it back, and it evokes in me extremely strong emotions about the war, you know, the destruction, the death, and the sacrifices on all sides, and the longing for peace. Let it be, you know. Let us reconcile our differences. Let's just have peace. And I think that song to me means a lot, a lot.
Nancy.
I don't have a comment on a particular song, but what I can say, and I speak as a protester of 1968 who sat in and occupied buildings at this university for 2 weeks until the police came and took us out. But, you know, we were there, you know, what motivated us to do something in the only place we knew how to do anything, which was here in this university, was to, you know, demonstrate when there were too many of us to, you know, to occupy the small amount of green that there is on the Columbia campus. We decided to go into some buildings. And so we stayed, the entering into the building became an occupation of the buildings. And we stayed in these buildings, 6 of them, more than 1,000 of us, for 10 days. We ate there, we slept there, we had people scurrying between buildings to carry messages. There were no cell phones, by the way. So there was we had no way to talk to each other. And so at regular intervals during the day, people who were at Strike Central, you know, were tasked with, you know, giving instructions, telling others, you know, what was going to happen, what we should expect. Did anybody hear any reports of the police having been called? And what was each building going to do when that day happened? And it wasn't an if, it was a when. And so the buildings and the people in them, I mean, buildings don't have personalities, I take that back. But the people who chose to be in specific buildings did so because at the beginning of the occupations, near the beginning, there was this conversation of like, all right, so how and under what circumstances will we leave? You know, and there were some people who say they will have to carry me out. And there were others who said, you know, if it gets to that, I'll walk out. But that was the spectrum.
About 2 years ago, the students said the reason they aren't as politically active was because the music at the time. Did it motivate them to be? One song, if you can think about that time.
Well, I would just like to say it can't be of this band, and it's the Grateful Dead, just so we're clear. It's not just one song. It's all the songs. One bleeds into the other, and they did come and perform on campus to, you know, our joy and delight. I don't think any of us up until that point had ever felt so important.
Who's that? Is it, oh, it's my co-professor, Tommy, who says, didn't know music before.
Well,
And-
I learned the music of the war. Well, I knew about it, but so just to go back to the clip of how we teach the course, we don't just use the music, we also use the art of the period. And I just wanted to add a little commentary to the clip showed about General Khac Tam's experience in the Adrang, because we teach a course. We take a title from an earlier, we borrowed the title from an earlier iteration of Hell Come to Earth, whatever episode that was, Ken. I think it was 4 or 5. We take the old title, Hell Come to Earth, and we talk about the Battle of the Adrang, where we don't show you the battle in the clip, but in the battle, we have in the class, it's a Khac Tam, Hal Moore in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And because we don't tell you in the clip who wins. We don't know who wins the battle at LZ X-Ray. But I think we do know who wins at the Battle of LZ Albany. And we say at the beginning of class, Ken, there's a myth that in the Vietnam War, that the Americans win all the battles but lose the war, except in the first one. Okay, but that goes through. But we do use art to describe Hell Come to War, not just the music. We use the art of the period. We use the art in the museums of Vietnam to look at the Vietnamese artists who, as we were saying last night, Lynn, borrowed from Picasso, from Guernica, what they did, and we bring that into the class in addition to the music.
You know, we have a lot of people in the Vietnam film, Americans, journalists, soldier journalists, and soldiers who don't survive, and others who make references to our own revolution, so that you have somebody saying, Phil Caputo saying, this must be what it was like as he was marching through a village when the British marched through Ipswich, Massachusetts, and another Mogi Crocker who doesn't survive the war, who's writing home saying, if I were a Vietnamese, I would be fighting for the Viet Cong because it would be like our revolution. And right now, Sarah Botstein and I are working on a film about the American Revolution, and you begin to realize the extent that places like New Jersey and South Carolina are exactly the kind, the British use the terms pacification with the New Jersey and with South Carolina, and it's unpacified, and it goes to hell, and it's also, they win just about every single battle.
Yes.
And lose the war.
Music,
Roger,
you're the
music.
music guy.
In terms of music, I think it speaks to the genius of Ken Burns. And I want to thank you for including me in the film, but also inviting me to the editing process, because what I witnessed was the expertise. So if it was, let's say, September of '67, Ken would make sure that the music was what was happening in September '67. If it was June of '68, what was the music that was playing in '68? So I think it just speaks to your genius and your artistry.
It's a whole team.
Dang Hoa, Emmy Award winner. You get to also, as he's busy translating.
He's translating.
And they're asking you a question.
What music you listen to?
It's a marching
Marching music.
But talk about the Vietnamese music.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the way you got the Vietnamese, you know, the Chin Kung San?
But we haven't heard Chin Kung San
I know, but
before '75.
well, you know, just okay. But why don't you find out something to say that's useful? He's a friend of mine, right?
Not anymore.
Actually, during the wartime, we supposed not to sing love song. Every song is just to encourage people to go to the front, to the battlefield. And love song is to make people soft. And you know that during the time that love is not good, because we have a kind of motivation. They try to make younger people not postpone their love, postpone their marriage, postpone their giving birth. And love song is a kind of very soft and not allowed to discourage the people who should head for the front. But well, in fact, our generation has seen sing songs that we call it yellow song, that about love, about romantic things. And we call it a pre-war songs or music.
General to Khac Tam, do you remember that song?
Có
Bài hát mà
có cái bài hát nào mà cái thời kỳ mà đánh nhau thì là có cái bài hát nào mà lính mình hay hát, nhưng mà lúc ở trong rừng ấy, thì là lính mình thích bài nào nhất? Thích
Thưa các vị, thưa các bạn, nếu mà cho tôi kể về cuộc chiến ở miền Nam Việt Nam á, thì tôi đã đánh nhau với Mỹ ấy, với quân chư hầu tới 10 năm rồi.
I fought 10 years in the jungle with American and Israel.
Thì không thể kể hết được. Cho tôi vài ngày tôi không thể kể hết được. Nhưng mà thời gian có hạn thì tôi chỉ
về nhạc, âm nhạc.
Thế bây giờ là về bài hát đấy. Thì thường là chúng tôi hát bài Vì nhân dân quên mình.
We sing.
Đấy là cái câu cửa miệng của người lính đấy.
We sing marching music about sacrifice for our nation.
Thế còn sau này thì là giải phóng miền Nam. Chúng ta cùng quyết tiến bước.
We sing about the liberation of the South.
Thế còn câu dặn của Bác Hồ của chúng tôi đó là đánh cho Mỹ cút, đánh cho Ngụy nhào.
And also we sing songs that deliver the teaching of our Uncle Ho, our founding father.
Tức là làm thế nào là tách rời hai cái lực lượng này ra.
To drive away the American and to topple the avian.
Bởi vì nếu mà Mỹ không hỗ trợ cho quân Ngụy quyền Sài Gòn ấy, thì chúng tôi chỉ trong một tuần là chúng tôi thắng ngay.
And without American support, we will capture the whole southern Vietnam within a week.
Vì chúng tôi xác định là cái hỏa lực của Mỹ ấy là rất là mạnh.
Because the American provided very strong power support.
Thế còn quá trình chúng tôi đánh nhau á, chiến đấu á, thì chúng tôi cũng được nghe những cái thông tin là thế giới ủng hộ Việt Nam như thế nào, trong đó có nhân dân Mỹ. Đặc biệt là cái phản chiến.
About the support of the world's people, especially Americans.
Cho nên càng động viên chúng tôi để mà hoàn thành được cái nhiệm vụ của mình.
The information encourage us to stay and to fight.
Thì đấy là trong quá trình tác chiến đấy.
That's during the war time.
I know that I am very biased and partial, and I want you both to say this, and Sarah as well. This was your favorite documentary that you made, favorite film.
No
Come
comment.
On. No.
What's the question?
This has to be.
Someone asked Duke Ellington, who's our most prolific and I believe our greatest American composer, what his most important composition was, and he said the one I'm working on now. And that's always the right answer, because it's all a process. It's not the final thing. It's the working on it, and particularly in this gloriously collaborative medium with the people that I've worked with. Some Lynn for more than 30 years, Sarah for almost 30 years. Jeff Ward, the writer of this, for 42 years, 43 years. This is now. It feels like we've been working with Tommy for 43 years, and.
I was just going to say, I think, I don't know if this has come up in your discussions with Tommy, but when we first called Tommy to see if he'd been recommended by a number of people that we should, if we're going to do Vietnam War, we need to talk to Tommy Vallely. He practically hung up on us and said, what are you going to do another movie about the Vietnam War? It's been done. What are you going to add? There's nothing new to say. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we'll call you back. And then we thought, we got to think of something to tell him why we're going to do something different that hasn't been done. And it's what Ken was saying about something that's a more open process. We're not trying to tell you what's wrong. We're going to find out what happened from many points of view. And little by little, we met with Tommy, and over time, he began to have just a little bit of faith that maybe we'd do something different. And just to say how grateful we are to you, Tommy, because this film wouldn't be what it is without your incredible
collaboration. When I arrived at Florentine Films, you had already picked Roger Harris. That process of getting so my role was only for what we call the winning side. I'm not sure I would have picked Roger Harris.
That's why we didn't put you in charge of that.
Yeah, I
Roger,
wasn't-
he
I
beats
would've
up on
picked
you
Nancy
every class,
Biberman,
so-
and I would have certainly picked Mai Elliot, but I don't know about Harris.
You get to respond to that, Roger.
Tommy's
Tommy, he beats you up in every
Tommy's
class.
been edging me to slap him across his head for the last 24 hours.
It sounds like he's more like he's doing the kind of baiting that you'd expect from a Matt Harrison, right? Or maybe a Tim O'Brien. It seems like an army shit that he's
That's what it
doing.
sounds
And
like.
it's like here's a
Even-
Marine brother
even-
that's giving you this kind of grief.
He sounds like a sailor. He
Yeah,
sounds like a sailor.
Oh,
I'm
ouch.
just joking, just joking.
I asked that question about this has to be your favorite or because the next question lead in is 9-10 years later, what would you have done differently after screening this, hearing responses, reviews?
The infuriating answer to you is the true answer for us, which is nothing. And the reason why goes back to your previous question, which is if you open a photo album of your life, you might look back and say, God, what was I doing wearing that? Or who convinced me to have that hairdo? Or I can't believe I'm behaving that way. Or I can't believe they put in that picture of me with no clothes on lying on the rug, right? But you do not take it out and tear it up. It is accurate to who we were then. Yeah. And that's all that matters. And the only reason we can say that is that we work in public broadcasting. It is a director's cut for us, but it is also the very, very best that we could do. And we did not stop working on it until we were confident that it was. And so there's nothing else to be done except what we do, which is to continue working on new things and try to figure out how to tell other complicated stories. So, I mean, they're related questions in a really good way.
Could I ask a question?
Lynn, and then this also applies to the talking heads. Would you have said something different, or do you wish something was included in that didn't make it in, or would you change something you said in over the 10 episodes? But Lynn first.
I'd have Nancy talk about the communications between the buildings in Columbia, right?
Even for a film this long, we always wish we had more time to say more, but at some point we just have to say this is the right length and each episode makes sense and the story has a coherence to it. So that's the only, but the cutting room floor is full of lots of things that don't belong in the finished film either. So no, I wouldn't change one frame, honestly, at this point. Yeah.
What about the talking heads? Yes.
I want to ask a question. I wonder, when you're in it, you have one perspective. And so I wonder, what is the effect that this film has on folks who haven't been to war? What's the message that they receive after watching this?
I'm going to throw this out at the audience because the students
That's a good
have some
idea.
really good answers. Angela
We have
had
some students in the class that are from the veterans. We have young Iraq, Afghan, or not, well, they're a little bit young for that, but we have.
I'm going to ask you first before we turn to the veterans because he was the one that made us.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I am a grad student at SIPA, and I took the Vietnam War class with Lien-Hang, and we were required to, thank you. And we watched the documentary for class, and even though I felt like a third party at first, because even though I'm a first generation Vietnamese American, I was raised not knowing anything about the Vietnam War. My parents shielded it from me. And after watching the film, it made me sympathize more for the North Vietnamese, even though I was raised to see them in an unfavorable light, to say it lightly, very lightly. And so after this, it just makes me very emotional, even though I wasn't even there. Even though, I don't even know anything about it. I'm so sorry. Just makes me so emotional still. So.
She's in our class. She's a student of ours.
Roger, another response?
Okay, I'm a little starstruck. This is incredible. My name's Patrick. I'm a student of Professor Hang's. I had the opportunity to take this class. From what I know of the Vietnam War, is mostly colored by uncles. One was a ranger that served. The other is a survivor of Hamburger Hill. And so it was always sort of,
Patrick, tell him your background.
well, I'm a student now, but I'm also a veteran, and I'll get to that. But I think how Mr. Burns and Ms. Novick, the articulation going through, I've seen your series 3 times actually, but watching it paired with this class and having the historical elements and the readings and the primary sources, how you articulate, especially episodes 1 and 10. I mean, I'm always crying no matter how many times I've seen them. And, you mentioned this idea of meaning and this idea of advocacy strategy, where you sort of use these polyphonic voices, and a bunch of Massachusetts veterans up there, and just, I suppose for me the takeaway is just I'm awestruck by history. I'm awestruck by the parallels that seem to repeat itself, and those contrasts have always stood out to me as I was going through this class. And I think for me, it was a very cathartic experience as a veteran and still struggling sort of with my own tours, Afghanistan, which similar parallels to a lot of this. So thank you.
Can I say a word about Columbia? So as I said earlier, I graduated from Barnard and was here in '68. And I am paying attention because I live in the neighborhood to the protests on campus right now and the encampments. And I've spent a fair amount of time talking with the students. And what was so remarkable to me is that they wanted to know about 1968 at Columbia. We're in a different time now. We can't deny that, a very scary time, as far as I'm concerned, in this country that I've never seen. But I think that it calls, it really requires of all of us to take an extra step in the direction of people you think you may disagree with, or whose views you think you know, but maybe they're not really what you know. And so I'm hopeful that Columbia will, if not embrace, take care of the students who are demonstrating now.
Don't hold your breath.
I want to invite the students because I'm looking at the time. So I'm going to now open it up to Q&A for the students, and you're going to see they're going to, remember, there's 2. There are 2 microphones.
Mic over here,
So you
yeah.
might please
Go.
So we,
Yeah.
maybe. Okay. All
Just-
right.
yeah,
Just keep,
just short.
Yes, keep short questions. Introduce yourself really quickly and the question.
We'll do our best.
Yes.
Okay, just real quickly. Hi, my name is Ming. I am a freshman in Columbia College studying history and economics. My question is mostly directed at the contemporaries of the war. So, Mr. Harris, Professor Vallely, Mrs. Biberman, Mai Elliot, and General Khac Tam as well. My question is, what is one thing you want to say to the modern, us, the students in this room, the young generations of Vietnamese and American youths who will be, taking on the future? What is one thing you want to say to them about, reconciling with the past and looking forward to a shared future? Thank you.
I can respond.
Just Mai and Tommy.
Oh, Mai and Tommy.
Mai, go ahead.
Oh, I think that it's, I agree with one of the students who got up. She was so emotional watching the film. I myself find it very hard to watch the film, even though I was involved in it, because it captured so well the horrors, the sufferings of everybody involved on all sides. So I think for the students who watch it as part of the class, is for them to keep an open mind, go in, don't think, this side was wrong, this side was right, because it's an extremely complicated story, as you can tell. And, people believed in what they were doing on all sides. And I think that the key thing for me, if I were you watching this, is to go in with no preconceived notion about what this war was all about, and just keep an open mind and be sympathetic to the people involved in all of this. What was their motivation? Why did they do what they did? I think if you do that, I think you would take a lot more away from it than you come in and become critical and say, well, how come Ken did this and he did not do that? I think he did an extremely, Ken and Lynn, extremely good job, an excellent job in trying to capture all aspects of the war, all perspectives. And I think that they were very objective. And myself, as a Vietnamese, I'm very grateful, because for me, that was the first documentary that presented the Vietnamese as people. The Vietnamese are primary actors in their own history, not as shadowy figures, supporting actors. And they gave voices to the Vietnamese. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I think that as Vietnamese Americans watching this, I think you should feel the same way. Well, at least I think you should. But of course, that's a judgment for you to make.
Tommy and then Roger.
I think that's, I share Mai's view. I have, I often think about where we were when I first worked on this film. I've changed my framework of its value. I do watch the film a lot, and when I see Ken or Lynn or Sarah socially, we're social friends, I always ask them, what do you think of episode 5? And I have to then go explain to them what is episode 5, and I always encourage them, you have to watch your own movie more than you do, right? And the reason I do that is because I take the train from Boston to come to class, and I always watch the film on the train with a headset, and I agree completely with Mai Elliot's observation, but I always learn something new when I watch it. And I now compare it without any, this is an exaggeration, but it's not a huge exaggeration. I look at each episode as a particular Shakespearean type play. It's that complicated. It's that sophisticated. I'm not sure we meant it to be that sophisticated, but the way that it was done, it created a form of deep sophistication of trying to how to learn. And so I highly recommend to the producers and the people who did it, watch the film a little bit more.
I just in thinking about Mai's beautiful words about not judging and keeping an open mind, which we definitely did coming into this, just watching the intro now, which I haven't seen in a long time, we tried very hard. It wasn't hard. We were very careful to be open to all the people we met and hear where they were coming from and what their experience was, and to have an open heart and an open mind, and to be present for everyone who was a witness. That said, I think the experience of telling the story from the point of view of the people who were affected by the decisions of the leaders, I don't I think it's very important to hold our leaders accountable for the decisions they made and the wrong decisions they made and the arrogant decisions they made and the, I would say, catastrophic decisions they made. And I would say that was true on all sides as well. And that was a big lesson, which I think I went into this thinking the Americans made a lot of mistakes and did a lot of awful things. It wasn't just the Americans. So anyway, I do think it's okay to judge once you have all this information. I think it's important.
Can I say something? I would just like to challenge the students. I think one of the most powerful comments made in this movie, in this documentary, was when he said, "There are no winners. There are no winners, and the only one who talks about winning are those who haven't fought." And so, I think that you students here at Columbia are some of the brightest in the world, and whether you're American or whether you're Vietnamese, you can see that as a result of war, there's nothing but harm is done. Some people make a lot of money off war, but the majority of people suffer from war. And so you need to position yourself so that you can become a policymaker, so to avoid the traditions of the past, because at some point, this has to stop. We have to figure out a way how we can develop peaceful negotiations without having to send our sons and daughters off to fight. And so that I challenge you guys to position yourself so that you can become the policy makers and make those types of determinations for the future generations.
You got the power today.
Tommy, I think you're out of a job. I think I found my co-teacher here with Dr. Harris. You seem like you must be a teacher or principal. I know this. Okay, back to the questions. Maybe we will take a few, and then I'm going to let the speakers decide on answering maybe one. So we'll take slide.
Me. Hi, my name is Amit. I'm a junior at GS at Professor Hang's class. My question is, how do you decide from thousands of stories and material what to show, to feature in the movie? Thank you.
My question was going to be for you, Mr. Burns. Last year, I think you were giving a commencement at Brandeis University, and you said that you were breaking with your typical public political neutrality. But as the close of the film sort of talks about how we reconcile with the past, the importance of these relationships, our allies, the strength of a world order, a liberal world order that this current administration is trying to break and is working to break. Can I ask you again to break maybe some of that political neutrality and speak to how that close of the film you perceive differently as more important in this moment right now?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I don't need to break anything. I think you expressed it exactly right. What we have is a system and a kind of an agreement among Americans and among nations that we're related to that is being upset right now, and that has tremendously dangerous potential consequences. With regard to the other excellent question, you would assume that making a film would be additive, but it's actually subtractive, and so we collect a lot of material. If there's 18 hours in this film, then we have at least 40 or 50 times that amount of material, and it tells us what needs to be in it and what we leave out. And so our job is to sort of listen to that material that works. I mean, there are very few laws in filmmaking except that you don't want to lose your audience, and so you can't be an encyclopedia. You have to allow certain singular stories to stand in for many other stories, and that's the rough aspect of this. It's very difficult, and as Lynn said, the cutting room floor, it didn't fit, but all that stuff is good. There's nothing bad on the cutting room floor. By the time you're taking stuff out, it's really good stuff. And it's just really difficult decisions of what to cut.
Hi, my name is Callisto. I am a third year at Columbia College studying political science. Really quickly, I wanted to say that in middle school, I started editing on iMovie for the first time, and I remember clicking Ken Burns, and I want you to know this is a big moment for me because I've done film, I've loved film, and it's kind of crazy to see the person in person who has an effect named after them in iMovie. It's crazy. Also, it's like a music video, the documentary, in how you use pictures. It's so wonderful. But the real question is, for people who are interviewed for the movie, I wanted to know what compelled you to participate? What made you want to tell your story? And what was maybe a good part of telling that story? And what was one of the challenges that came with telling that story and knowing that it would be turned into a film and like shown to people?
Well, I can say something about that.
Go right ahead.
The fact that I said I was sorry enraged many people who were in the movement. Like, we had nothing to be sorry about. Why would you have said that? So I hope that's an answer.
And can we just say that in the face of the Vietnam Memorial, Nancy is responding to the idea that in the course of her opposition to the war, a very noble opposition, she had joined in the courses of calling people her own age baby killers and things like this. And she began to see, as the passage of time, not the absurdity or the wrongness of it, but just the emotional truth of it that is so much bigger than the dialectic that her, unfortunately, former colleagues still are adhering to. And that's the thing about stories. That's the thing about Shakespeare. Tommy's absolutely wrong about it, but Shakespeare has what Yeats called negative capability, the ability to hold two things in tension. And if you live entirely on a yes-no binary thing, you have no ability to understand the depth of reconciliation that Nancy expressed in that moment, and you are forever stuck in whatever rut you've decided to choose. I'm for the war, I'm against the war. And if you can't then step back and understand, as Nancy did, something much more profound, then you have no sense of negative capability. You have no ability to understand the poetry and art of the world, and you are forever condemned to live in a hell or an imaginary heaven that doesn't exist.
Yes, hello, my name is David. I'm a third-year GS student. I know that you said that you personally don't have your own favorite work. If I could throw my own opinion, your baseball documentary is kind of one of the first ones that I watched, and something that I kind of rewatch very often, at least once a year.
Now you're bringing up an important subject.
He knows more about baseball than he does about Shakespeare.
That's true.
I know that many years after making that documentary, you got a chance to make the extra innings part of it, and I was wondering if there's any stories from the interviews you guys did during this, or if there's any kind of historical events you either didn't mention or didn't touch on enough that kind of float around in your head still, that years down the line, if you do make a extra innings to the Vietnam War.
We said that we would do, I mean, I'm a Red Sox fan, so we did the whole 10th inning and put up with Joe Torre, who's probably the best interview in that film, and that Lynn did, and an amazing thing just so that we could do 2004. And what I said after the 10th inning came out in 2010, that if the Cubs won the World Series, we'd have to do an 11th inning. The Cubs won the World Series, and we still haven't sort of fulfilled that promise, but yeah.
Okay, I think because we are now almost at the 10-minute mark, I'm going to have you all ask your question, but very quickly, and then I'm going to let the panelists have the last say. They're going to choose a question that you all ask very quickly to give you your time. Okay, real quickly, though.
Hi, my name is Dora. I'm a second-year student at Columbia College, and my question is, I'm just a little awestruck, sorry. I'm always, like, when I was watching the documentary, I was often kind of struck by how personal, testimonies can really shift understandings of the war. So looking back, were there, like, any interview moments or testimonies that kind of changed your perspective on the war? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm an undergraduate student here. I took the Vietnam War history class and was very compelled and found your documentary to be very thought-provoking. So my question is for the filmmakers. One of the aspects that I consider to be most thought-provoking were the on-camera interviews, which I think explore every possible perspective of the war. But both former Senator John McCain and former Secretary of State John Kerry, although they played very prominent roles in the war, weren't featured in those interviews. So I'm curious as to whether that was a decision on your end.
So let me answer this. I think for Lynn and I will speak it very clearly. The interview with John Musgrave, we always thought that if some disaster happened and we were left with only one interview, we'd sort of retitle the film the Education of John Musgrave, and then do that. When you saw in the introduction the very definition of patriotism, you're looking at a young soldier that dissolves into a hippie with long hair and a beard and protesting and whatever. That's John Musgrave, both of them, right? And so that's that story. And we went, before we did anything on this film, to John Kerry and to John McCain, and we said, we need your help. We cannot interview you because you are in the public sphere right now, and we're not going to do Henry Kissinger, who lobbied shamelessly to be in the film, or Daniel Ellsberg or Jane Fonda, right? Because you were in it. But we will tell your stories. And it's very conscious that the people that appear none of them are really famous or well-known. Maybe Tim O'Brien in a literary field, maybe John Negroponte in a diplomatic field, a couple of other people, but nobody was well-known. And so there wasn't a sense that they might have a hidden agenda. It was really important. And besides John Musgrave, I think we'd also say that the generosity of Mrs. Crocker, who lost her son, of a Gold Star mother, to be able to share once again the pain of seeing two men come up to her door. This is beyond. She doesn't have to do it, and by doing it, it's liberating for us as filmmakers and everybody who watches the film, and we will always be grateful to her for that willingness to share the story of Mogi Crocker, who's when we go like Louis Sorley, as we often do, we always go to Mogi Crocker's sign. It's way up there. You can't touch it, but you can see it.
Hi, my name is Artemis. I'm a student at Columbia with Professor Hong. I study history, and my question is to the documentary makers and also to any of the panelists who feel like they have interrogated their own perspectives on the war. You have discussed how you felt you learned new parts of history and uncovered new truths through the documentary making and history making process. Do you have any points that have stuck with you that you feel like there is more to the story and where you feel like there are more truths to be uncovered? Thank you.
Hi, I would also like to congratulate everyone who was part of making this. And I look at it, the interviews that were made, you were able to interview a lot of mothers, fathers, grandparents, and people that are from a generation before us, but you got to see those people not necessarily live out their lives, but you guys have, like, for example, aged in the world together. And so on speaking about like making it liberating, what could you tell us about how it felt retelling a story which some people were a part of and not a part of, but why was it so important for you to take on this challenge to then talk about something for Vietnam was a symbol of a decolonizing moment, and to go back on a symbol for the decolonization period? And so do you know that, what could you maybe tell about interviewing the parents or for like silenced voices that were on the other side that now you were able to gain perspective on, or something like that? I think it's very important because these are parents who also went through that as well. And I think I wanted to congratulate everyone for being a part of that because it is very important to me.
You know, you don't know why you do these things. We were finishing up a film on the Second World War, and we'd vowed after the Civil War that we weren't going to do any more wars, and then we got sucked into doing something on the Second World War, and before it was done, I said we're doing Vietnam. And there's no rational, thought-out thing. It's not like I've assembled 2 or 3 professors, here's my thesis proposal. It's like I said we're doing Vietnam, and 10.5 years later it was done. But in the course of that, we drew on all of the scholars, and we did these things, and we pursued all what I've called the emotional archaeology of it. And I think that what happens is, to your question about interrogation of that stuff, you never leave these works satisfied. You know that the work is done, but you also say that we're setting in motion a series of questions that you now ask 8 years after the film has been done, and will continue to ask. And so you basically sound your own questions, hoping that they reverberate enough to sponsor new questions and others. So there's obviously, it raises this film, perhaps more than any other film we've done, raises more questions than it could possibly even, I won't even say answers, because it only suggests answers. You know what I'm saying?
Hello, my name is Ariel, and my question is, how did the team go about sourcing some of the interviews and perspectives for the series? And did people find any difficulty in finding voices and people willing to speak?
Well, I'll speak for Ken and myself and Sarah Botstein, the producer of the film, who is here somewhere. Sarah, are you in the room? Yeah. So, you know, it's a trial and error process. So we might say we're looking for someone who fought in a particular battle. And then we would go through various networks to try to find someone. And then maybe we're talking about war. It's very traumatic. People might not want to talk about it, even if they were there. Maybe they don't remember it, or they're, you know, not open. So it becomes a process of elimination. Some people don't want to be involved in something like this, and I can completely understand why. We were looking for a Gold Star mother, like Ken was saying. So, you know, we sort of started asking around, and we talked to a few people, and Mrs. Crocker was willing to speak, and she was already almost 90, so just we should try her, and if she was great, we didn't need to find another Gold Star mother. We were looking for Vietnamese who fought on the winning side, who fought in particular battles, who went down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And we learned as we went along. And it was also just being open to meeting people, hearing their story, and then realizing, oh, I never heard of the Battle of Ap-Bac, but I think it's important. Maybe we should try to talk to this person. And then they introduced us to another person, and Hoa helped us enormously in Vietnam, just introducing us to all kinds of people with many different experiences that we didn't know we were looking for. That's our, you know, we were at least kept an open mind. So it really is a trial and error, and sort of being present and just kind of getting to know people and seeing if they're willing to be part of something like this.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I'm a senior studying history. And I was curious, obviously there's a lot of different ways to tell the story, and I was wondering if there are any moments of disagreement that you had in how you were going to portray certain elements or who you were going to highlight. Thanks.
You know, nobody yells. You know, there's always disagreement. People have different perspectives, and you listen, and you know, it's a really wonderful process. It's very collaborative, and it's mostly generated. The answers, if that's the right word, have to do with scholarship and what actually happened. You know, the TikTok. And then most of the artistic stuff comes together and coalesces. I, you know, read as a boy Slaughterhouse-Five. Billy Pilgrim is unstuck in time, and he sees World War II movies backwards. And so I had the idea for the opening sequence where the helicopter goes off the deck, and we run all the way back from this unbelievable waste of dumping helicopters in the South China Sea to a French soldier walking backwards through a rice paddy, and just said, answering Musgrave, not Musgrave, but Karl Marlantes in the beginning, what happened? You had to first, as we're doing today, reverse everything, go back, start from zero, reset, no preconceptions, no answers, and say, okay, now how do we begin? And every single one of those shots is in the film, going forward in the right direction at some point in the film. And so that's the answer.
I have a wonderful team of editors that do an enormous amount of creative work as well.
Hello, my name is Harriet. I'm a sophomore in Professor Hong's class. And I remember Professor Vallely discussing the profession in the US that...
Did you say Professor Vallely?
Yes, Tommy. The profession in the US that distinguished itself the most, or one of the largest ways during the Vietnam War, is journalism. And I'm curious about the role that journalism played in the production of your series. You include Neil Sheehan as a talking head, but I'm curious about other ways that it played a key role. Thank you.
Yeah, Neil Sheehan is one of our heroes, absolutely. Bright Shining Lie. Joe Galloway, absolutely. The journalists that were there on the ground to bring the story home and make sense of something that was kind of hard to make sense of while it was happening, and to question the official version and try to find the truth. We wouldn't know this history as well as we try to know it if it wasn't for them. Absolutely true.
Hi, I'm Layla. I'm a senior studying physics at Barnard, also in the Vietnam War course. So for the interviewees of the documentary, some of you, like Tommy, have watched the documentary many times over, but is there anything different about the experience of watching yourselves on this big screen on this anniversary with all of us watching with you?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a sweet question.
Thank you very much. I like clothes. I'm sort of pretty vain. I like
The
clothes.
mic.
I like expensive clothes, and I was looking at my tie. I was looking at the tie that I had. I was quite impressed with the tie. I had experience with. I would see who they had interviewed, and I had watched the interview with Neil Sheehan. So I have told the students, Ken, Lynn, and Sarah, that I learned about the Vietnam War on 31st and 6th Avenue. At 31st and 6th Avenue, I watched Neil Sheehan's interview. What did I take away from Neil Sheehan's interview? I didn't take away that he's maybe that he's the American Homer, that he wrote a book about an American Achilles. I take away, what is he wearing? And his suit is so good.
It is good.
His suit is so good. And
You're never going to.
And they had a better makeup person than they had for me. I went out and bought that outfit. All right. So what I looked at in the film was, that still looks pretty good.
Mai or Roger, you want to talk? Oh.
I want to acknowledge my son, though. Matthew, my son Matthew's here.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Caleb. I'm in Professor Hang's class. So, of course, thank you all for being here. And, of course, Mr. Harris, thank you for your service, and Mr. Vallely as well. So, of course, in my discussion section with Autumn, who's my TA, I was often reminded of course, what you said, Mr. Harris, that, of course, there is no winners or losers when it comes down to war. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, there's death. And so my question will be for Professor Vallely. So what did ultimately, I think that, although there's death, I think there's also lessons that we can learn from war. So my question will be, so what did the U.S. ultimately learn diplomatically from the war?
Yeah, that's I would say I would say we learned, for a while, we learned a little. But we certainly did not learn enough. And it's a I wake up at night thinking about going to class. I'm nervous about class. I don't think the nation learned enough about the Vietnam War, from the Vietnam War. It's one of the reasons I love. It's one of the reasons I love working on it. I'm very impressed with the amount of time Columbia spends on trying to learn about that. A big shout out to Lien-Hang and Ed Miller and other academics that produced the Cambridge history of the Vietnam War 50 years after the war. But I do want to go back to Harriet's question about journalism. 25 years before Lien-Hang and Ed Miller wrote the 50 year of the Cambridge history, the Library of America wrote a volume which took the greatest journalism of the Vietnam War era and made it a very important classic in America. And those two classics, the classics that's just been produced on the and that done by the Library of America, are sort of the bookends somewhere in there we learned something. We should have learned something. But we certainly haven't learned enough.
Last three, because we are over time, and then wrap up. Okay, so.
Oh, okay, I'll go ahead. I'm Susan. I'm an alum from Columbia, but I'm still an auditor, so I'm still a student. Okay, so this is my question, and it's to the Vietnamese, in fact. And I want to start by congratulating the Vietnamese for absorbing the story that no one wins in war. And how can you teach the world, the rest of the world, not to have this need for revenge and therefore more and more war? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael. I'm a third-year GS student. This question is for the Marines on the panel. So since leaving the military, I've taken a very strong anti-war stance myself. Unfortunately, there's many who don't share that sentiment, including my loved ones, family members, friends. My question is, how did you communicate with your loved ones after coming back home about something you feel so passionately about, while still being able to maintain your relationships with them? How did you communicate how you felt about, killing, the war, stuff like that, and tried to like regulate your emotions and kind of like communicate to them effectively?
I really didn't talk much about the war, except to my family. I think the day that I was interviewed by Florentine Films was the first time I really opened up about it. But I tried to suppress everything and just focused on going to school. I went back to school, got a bachelor's degree, master's degree, and a PhD. But I tried to put the war behind me. I didn't want to think about it, but I was having nightmares. Every night I had nightmares. I still do. I still have nightmares. But it wasn't until Florentine Films interviewed me that I started speaking openly about it. And now, like you, I'm a peace dove. I don't think that war is not the answer. And I hate to even think or even read or see that we still have troops that are going off and fighting and killing and dying.
I think that, war has existed since time immemorial. And I don't think that, unfortunately, that it would never cease to be a way of resolving conflict, imposing your will, or gaining more power over other people. So I'm under no illusion that the horrors of the Vietnam War, I was never under that illusion, would be a warning to the United States or other nation not to resort to war. To me, the film that I liked very much, it was a French film called Grande Illusion, about World War I. And it was called a grand illusion because World War I was so horrendous. It was so brutal that there was feeling among many people in Europe that there would never be another war. But you have World War II, which was even worse. So I don't think that war would ever stop as long as human beings are on this earth. And so I'm very pessimistic, and I'm sorry I am. But I think that that's just, the way human beings have always behaved. And so I'm sorry, but I don't think I have any illusion about it.
I would just say, Ken, that I when I'm in the film and I talk about the history of the world, which is one of the episodes, I'm reflecting Mai Elliott's sentiments.
That's right. We're asking Tommy about what he's doing, and he has to stop and put it in the kind of perspective that the excellent questions have asked. And Tommy says, it's the history of the world, meaning this is what human beings do, right? And part of your question, the last question about the heartbreaking question about relatives and people who still have that, family members and friends who don't subscribe to that thing. The next episode is also named by Tommy as he takes his well-earned medals and throws them away in front of the Capitol building, and he calls it a disrespectful loyalty. And that takes as much courage, if not more courage, than it is to face the kinds of things in battle that give Roger nightmares and Tommy his sartorial anxieties.
Well, that helps.
Last.
Hi, my name is Maya Brooks. I'm a third year at Barnard taking history of the Vietnam War. My question was for the veterans or even just active participants in the anti-war movement or just in the war. If your opinions had changed in the process of conducting these interviews and being part of these interviews or watching it after, and also working with alongside other soldiers that you were fighting against and what that experience was like. Thank you.
Lynn, what's the question?
How the process changed the perspective of people in the film.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So if it changed your understanding, I think that
It was therapeutic for me.
I learned about the Vietnam War. I learned from.
I think when you're in something you don't know.
I had a complete new education about what had happened. I learned. I had some knowledge of the war being in the Marine Corps, as did Roger. But I think when Roger and I and Lynn and Ken went on tour with the film, we went on tour with the film. Roger and I would go back to our hotel afterwards, and we were like, the veterans would come up to us when we make, thank you for making the film. I knew about the Vietnam War from my own experience, but I didn't know about the whole war. So, that in itself is why the film is so valuable, is that when we would see the veterans that would come out to see the film, this is however a year ago, there was a lot of veterans that came to see this thing. And they had almost the same experience that we had, which is we knew what happened to us in the Vietnam War, but we did not know what happened in the whole story of the Vietnam War. And so for us, it was not only therapeutic, it was also, enlightening. So that's the story. We're going to show some clips, a clip at the end. Go ahead.
Yes.
General Tom.
Kính thưa các vị trong nhóm làm phim, thưa các bạn.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
Tôi thời gian không còn nữa, tôi nói câu cuối cùng.
I would like to have the last word because we have limited time.
Trong cái cuộc đời tôi chiến đấu cùng với lính Mỹ đấy, thì tôi có một cái kỷ niệm rất là sâu sắc và đến bây giờ tôi vẫn không quên.
I have a profound experience and memory during my my fighting with the Americans. I will never forget.
Đó là cái trận gọi là trận Đầu Châu theo cái danh của địa phương.
We call it the Buffalo, Water Buffalo Head.
Ở Gia Lai.
In Gia Lai province, in the Central Highland.
Tháng 12 của năm 1976.
Sau 76.
Sau 76.
Bao nhiêu ạ?
Năm 1976.
76 thì là
66.
It's a December 1966.
Thế thì đơn vị tôi là thọc sâu và bắt được 2 người Mỹ.
We captured 2 American prisoners of war.
Thế thì lúc đó là lính thì nó cũng rất là căm thù.
And we have hatred and try to our soldier want to exert our revenge over the soldiers.
Thế thì tôi cử 4 người khỏe canh 2 người lính.
I sent 4 of our men to carry the 2 American POW.
Đưa ra về hậu phẫu mà ông ấy 2 ông này bị thương rồi, bị thương nặng đấy.
And because they both wounded.
Thì tôi nói với họ rằng trên quá trình khơi ra thì phải bảo đảm an toàn và không được để cho người ta chết.
I instructed them to provide the greatest effort so that they will be alive.
Phải băng bó cho người ta.
We have to
Vì tôi nghĩ
provide proper
là
bandage.
cũng là con người.
Because I think they are also human beings.
Khi họ chống lại thì mình cũng phải diệt. Nhưng mà khi họ đã bị thương rồi, nó là con người, cho nên phải cứu chữa họ. Thì không được làm cái gì khác. Thì lính nó chấp hành như thế. Lúc đấy tôi làm đại trưởng.
Because they were our opponents, so we fought against them. But when they are in our hand and they're wounded, they are human beings, so we have to.
I think that is, on that note, please stand with me because this is, you've heard it here. I think we've learned so much about the Vietnam War through the film and through your answers today. Thank you so much.
Đây là câu chuyện thứ nhất.
Yes. So.
Còn câu chuyện thứ hai thì tôi đề nghị vào cái bộ phim như thế này. Tôi nói về bộ phim. Đó. Tôi muốn nói một câu về bộ phim thôi. Để không có dịp nói nữa. Cái bộ phim thì chúng tôi rất là hoan nghênh. Tôi xem nhiều lần.
I watched the series a lot of times.
Nhưng mà tôi đề nghị với nhóm làm phim nếu làm lại, nhất là ông đạo diễn.
I have some recommendations. If you make the series again,
cần phải làm rõ về nguyên nhân của cuộc chiến tranh.
You have to analyze the cause of the war, of the Vietnam War, yeah, to make it clear.
Còn một số hỏi, trong đó có ông Bảo Ninh của chúng tôi, với các bạn ở đây, nói rằng cuộc chiến tranh không có bên nào thắng.
And one of our Vietnamese veterans, Bảo Ninh, the writer, said that no one won the war.
Nếu chỉ dừng ở đó, người ta vẫn thắc mắc suốt đời.
And if the series stopped there, there would be more questions.
Mà quan niệm của tôi ấy, đó là một thắng lợi sau cuộc chiến tranh đã kết hai dân tộc lại, đoàn kết từ hướng về tương lai.
For my own perspective, I think that the war is to reconcile the both nations.
Tức là quên lại hận thù đi.
And we set aside the revenge.
Hết, xin cảm ơn.
Okay.